Good evening, everybody. We could get started. My name is Dave Argentata. I'm Director of Student Services for the district. And first, I just want to thank you for attending. I'm not discouraged by the number of people. This is something my office wants to do once a quarter, maybe 5 times a year, with something over the summer. And we thought a great entry was doing a session on vaping. We have somebody here very knowledgeable who I'll introduce momentarily. But right now at the high school, it's a big deal. And I talked to some folks on the way in, know nothing about vaping. This is a good entry point. So again, thank you for coming. I would like to introduce first Melissa Evans. She's one of our 2 social workers here in the district. Just second year, almost in year. You're finishing year 2 essentially. And then we have every school district in the state of Pennsylvania, every school in the state of Pennsylvania needs to have a student assistance program team. And of course, all 6 buildings in the district have a team. And we use the Caron Foundation, which I think you're familiar with, to help us run that team. And this is Gabby Conway, who does an outstanding job. She's here three days a week works out of the high school. So she does a great job. She's going to present, and I'll turn it over to you now. And thank you so much. Gabby's parents are here to see her, so we appreciate what she does for us. So thank you, Gabby.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome, parents. I would prefer not to use the microphone, so can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Okay. Thank you for joining me this evening. I know Dave already told you a little bit about myself, but before I jump into the objectives of the presentation tonight, just tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a lead SAP specialist with Caron Treatment Centers. I work part-time here at the high school, and I also am the liaison for Berks Catholic High School as well. In addition to that, I also supervise other SAP specialists in the Berks County region. So work part-time in schools, work part-time with other liaisons as well. I've been with Caron since 2018. I also wanted to introduce Charis Robinson. She could not be with me this evening to present, but she is the staff liaison for the intermediate school and the middle school. So I don't know if we have any parents from those levels here, but she spends 1 day a week at Mifflin IS, and she spends 2 days a week at the middle school. So again, wanted you to be able to put a face to a name. Her contact information is at the bottom, and I believe this presentation is also being recorded, so if there's anything that you missed, you can definitely go back to the slides. Feel free to take pictures if you would like my contact information, hers. I also have my business cards up front here too at the end if you would like to come chat or grab a card. Okay, we're good to go, Dave. All right, so just some Caron quick facts before we get started. We're a nationally recognized chemical dependency treatment facility. Caron has been providing treatment services for over 60 years, and our student assistance program has been around since 1990. We offer a full spectrum of treatment services, so we treat adolescents all the way up to older adults. We have treatment centers here in Pennsylvania. In Wernersville is our main treatment center, but we also have treatment centers in Florida. And we also have recovery centers in Wyomissing, Philadelphia, DC, New York City, and Atlanta as well. So we have treatment centers, across the country. So our objectives for this evening, we're going to review current trends in teen substance use, really focusing on vaping, cannabis, and alcohol. We'll highlight key risk and protective factors for adolescent use, specifically discussing addiction as it relates to the teenage brain. And we'll discuss best practice approaches for preventing or intervening if you have a concern regarding your child. So right now, you might feel a little isolated. We've spent the past 2+ years in a pandemic. We really haven't had many opportunities to come together for presentations such as this. You might be unsure how to talk to your child about this subject, so no worries, that's what we're here to do tonight. You might be tired, it's a Monday evening, you probably wouldn't, your first choice would not be to attend a vaping presentation at the high school, so thank you for being here. You were hopefully looking forward to learning some new information this evening. Just know that you're not alone in this topic. It's not an easy topic to discuss, and we're glad you're here. So the adolescent experience is very different today when it comes to substance use than it was when we were young. A little more different when I was young. I'm only in my 30s still, but back in the day, our telephones had cords. We socialized in person mainly. We ran around the neighborhood, knocked on each other's doors to come play. Our key that opened the door to the car also started the car. We didn't have all these key fobs. Our directions were, we followed a map, or MapQuest. If you were my age, I had to print the directions from MapQuest and use them. Our nicotine was smoked and our marijuana was weak. It was a much simpler time. But today, kids are often spending a lot of time isolated in their homes or their bedrooms. Constant access to social media, instant gratification, instant news. They can access pretty much anything at their fingertips. Nicotine and marijuana can be vaped, and marijuana is so much stronger today. Is anything the same, you're probably wondering. Still, the most commonly used substances with adolescents are alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana, so that remains the same. So we'll talk about a lot of that this evening. The strength of those substances has changed, and the way that they're consumed has changed, but it's still those three main substances that are the most popular with adolescents. The good thing is that we know more today than we did back then. So we have a much stronger knowledge of the teenage brain. Teens' brains are developing up until they're 25 years old. We know that they're risk takers, they're group-oriented, and they're often using emotion over logic. And the reason for that is a teen's prefrontal cortex is the very last part of their brain to develop. So this is responsible for decision-making, weighing pros and cons, and using restraint. So all of the things that adolescents are not great at doing, right? So our message at Caron is to delay. Delay, delay, delay. If you look at this graph, this shows the percent of population 12 and older with a current substance use disorder. So if you notice, adolescents who use before the age of 15 account for 28% of the population with a substance use disorder, all the way down to 4.3% if they started first using 21 years of age and older. So that's why we say delay as long as possible. It lowers your risks of developing a substance use disorder over time. So you heard me say substance use disorder a lot. That's kind of the new term for addiction. Not only do we know a lot more about the teenage brain, but we know a lot more about substance use disorders. So we know who's at a greater risk, we know what the warning signs are, and we have some advice about what parents can do to help intervene if you're concerned about your child. Life is such right now that we all probably care for or know someone with a substance use disorder. It's an unfortunate reality. Substance use disorder is a tragic disease, and it makes it hard to love someone who suffers from it. So just know there's always hope, and we'll talk about some resources this evening. So let's quickly talk about some risk factors for substance use disorder. Age of first use is a big one. So because teenagers' brains are still developing, it's really great because they can learn new skills and tasks and information really quickly, but it's also a negative because they're at a greater risk for developing a substance use disorder down the line. Family history. So at an age that's appropriate, I recommend that you share with your child if you have a family history of addiction so that they understand the risks as well. Being around others that use, we hope that teenagers will make healthy choices and positive decisions, but when they're around peers that use, it normalizes unhealthy behaviors and increases their risk of using themselves. Pre-existing untreated mental health issues. So whether your child is struggling with anxiety, depression, whether it's short-term, long-term, those disorders can be treated, but if left untreated, teens can often use substances to cope, and that is not, might be a quick fix for them, but it's not a long-term healthy solution. And childhood trauma. Obviously, this population of students is going to be at a greater risk of addiction. So let's talk about drugs and the central nervous system. So mind-altering substances fall into 4 main categories. We have our stimulants, which speed up your heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure. Examples are cocaine, meth, ecstasy, ADHD meds, and nicotine. We have your depressants, which is the opposite. Slows down your heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure. Examples are alcohol, Xanax, Valium, OxyContin, and Vicodin. Concerns with stimulants is that they can speed up your heart rate to the point of a heart attack. Concerns about suppressants, it has the opposite. It can slow down your heart rate to the point of your heart stopping. And then we have hallucinogens, which alter your perception of reality. So LSD, PCP, and mushrooms. And then one which we'll talk about a lot this evening are cannabinoids, which can actually be all 3. So marijuana can be all 3 depending on the strain used, the route of consumption, and the potency. We'll talk a lot about the potency this evening. It's one of the risks of using cannabinoids nowadays. So let's jump into some current trends about substance use. First, we're going to talk about nicotine and vaping specifically. So a lot of the data that is in this presentation is pulled from a study called Monitoring the Future, which is a nationwide study. It's performed by the University of Michigan every year, and it's funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So there are slides in here from 2020 as well as current information from 2021. Just wanted to note there that the 2020 survey did not encompass the typical amount of students in schools due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This usually happens right around February, March when schools shut down. So it accounts for some of the population, but not all. 2021 data will be all students. Okay, so current trends in nicotine. So prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, vaping was actually called the other epidemic. And the reason why was because in one single year, there was a 78% increase in e-cigarette use among adolescents in 1 year. Oh, look at that, my pointer works. I just bought this, I'm excited. All right, so these are 2 examples of some popular rechargeable vaping devices. Juul, which now the company is actually called PAX, and Enjoy is another popular rechargeable device. Snus is moist powdered tobacco that's in a pouch that you put between your lip and your gum, and it's spit-free and smoke-free. So you don't see, unlike chewing tobacco, people carrying around a water bottle or a cup and spitting that nasty brown liquid. It's easy to hide. We have cigars and cigarillos. Students are drawn to these because they come in packs, single packs. They're taxed less, they're flavored, which is a big reason why adolescents use these types of products, because they like the flavors. They also use them to wrap blunts and smoke marijuana. Then you have your traditional 20 cigarettes in a pack. Hookah became more popular, I would say, in the last 10 years, mostly on like college campuses and in cities. So here's a graph, again, from Monitoring the Future. This is from 2020. Whoops. So this is just past year nicotine use. So students that said they used at all in the past year. If you notice, from 2017 to 2020, the numbers doubled, which is concerning. This is 10th and 12th between 2019 and 2020. It remained pretty steady, which is good. We didn't see a huge increase. But the numbers are still alarmingly high. 34.5% of 12th graders admit to vaping in the past year, 30% of 10th graders, and 16% of 8th graders. One good thing that we're seeing is the Juul brand. We're seeing a decline with 10th and 12th graders. The concerns, again, teens are still vaping at alarming rates, and COVID-19 and vaping is especially unhealthy due to the risks to their lungs. They're also sharing devices a lot in school. Some positive changes that we've seen in laws. Last year, the purchase age of tobacco went from 18 to 21. So reducing access, if you know a senior, an 18-year-old in a school, who can buy you a vaping device, teens are less likely to run in social circles with 21-year-olds. So this will likely delay the onset of daily use. Another great change from last year is that there was a ban on flavored pods. There are some exceptions to this. So Juul specifically can no longer sell mint, mango, some of the other popular flavors that teens are purchasing. They can still buy menthol and tobacco, but you can no longer purchase online or in stores the Juul flavored pods. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but this does not include a flavor ban on e-juice for tank systems. So a tank system is a larger vaping device where you actually purchase the e-juice or the e-liquid separately and you dump it into the vaping device yourself. It does not include a ban on those flavors. So as laws change, vaping devices change. This is a money-making endeavor, so companies have to keep up with who they are targeting the most, which unfortunately are adolescents. So disposable vapes, which it's a self-contained system, you can't open it and add your own flavors. You usually get about 200 puffs and then you throw it out and you buy a new one. So Puff Bar is one of the most common ones. As you can see, it comes in all kinds of different colors, flavors. That is the most popular with adolescents right now. So this skirts the FDA ban because, again, it's a self-contained device, not one where it sells separate pods or that you can add e-liquid yourself. So this is just some more data from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. This is from 2021. So currently more than 2.06 million youth are estimated to be current e-cigarette users. Out of those 2.06 million, 85% are using flavored e-cigarette products. When you ask students in groups, they don't say, I want the menthol flavor, I want the tobacco flavor. Adults are using those, teens are not. Most commonly used device, again, disposables, accounts for over half of the types of devices that are being used by adolescents, and about 1 in 4 report using e-cigarettes daily. So this is actual data from at Caron. I run support groups 3 days a week on mental health as well as drug and alcohol topics. One of our support groups we run is called Project Connect. So it's our tobacco cessation group. It's an 8-week program. These are actual results from that program as to why kids vape. Not necessarily here, but schools all across the county. So they say, I was curious about them. I saw my friend or family member use them. They're available in flavors such as mint, candy, fruit, or chocolate. Again, adults don't feel the need to use cotton candy flavored vapes. I can use them to do tricks. I don't know if any of you have, maybe your child has shown you TikTok videos or videos on YouTube, but people do vape tricks. So they puff circles, they do all sorts of tricks, which makes it appealing to youth. perceive them to be less harmful than other forms of tobacco, such as cigarettes. Again, their perception. So what is actually being vaporized? When you ask kids, they say it's water vapor. Do you all think that it's water vapor? Like you're putting your mouth on a humidifier? No. So what is actually in e-juice is propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. So these are clear liquids that are mostly used in food products, beauty products, the medical industry. They're not harmful in those materials because they're not being ingested into your lungs. What's being ingested into your lungs is actually an aerosol, so it's more like when you spray hairspray. That's more like what you're ingesting in your lungs. It's sticky, it's waxy, it's oily, and it leaves that type of film on your lungs. Also nicotine, obviously, flavoring. Some people are unaware that you can actually smoke leaf marijuana in vapes. Other psychoactive substances such as THC oil and marijuana concentrates. We're going to talk a lot more about that in a bit. And they're easy to modify and fill with your own homemade substances, which is a concern. Kids are getting them on the black market and they're filled with who knows what. So this is just a quick 1 minute long video. It shows you basically a kid's backpack being emptied on a desk, and school supplies and vapes, which are all together, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. So yeah, pretty crazy, huh? And I've seen all of those vaping devices. The one that looks like the water enhancer is actually a really popular one. It's a Soren vape. So although most teens are really not trying that hard to hide their vapes, here are some other uncommon products that we're seeing. So top left is a sweatshirt where the drawstrings have been removed, and that's actually a vape tubing that's inside the sweatshirt. I've seen kids sometimes in class just put their head down into their sweatshirt, vape, and come back up. The smaller devices don't produce smoke or a lot of vapor, so they're harder to detect. This is actually a key fob, or a vape that's made to look like a key fob. This is a smartwatch, that's a vape. Backpack, and an inhaler, that's actually a vape. So again, I wouldn't say that these are the most common products used. Most are the ones that, the Juul, the Soren, the Puff Bar, the other more practical ones that actually look like vapes, but these are being seen, just so you're aware. Some other environmental signs of vaping. Different smells. So, if you have a teenager and you go into your teenager's room and you smell something that smells like incense or cotton candy or mango or something that is unlike the scent that they usually have in their room, which is probably dirty socks or some other gross teenage smell, just know that that could be a sign of vaping. Obviously a hazy room. Some vaping devices produce larger clouds of vapor than others. And I know this sounds silly, but obviously the bathroom fan could be running for numerous reasons, but if you're noticing your child is going in there often, the fan is running often, when they go to other people's homes and they're spending a lot of time in the bathroom with the fan running, just know that that could be a warning sign. Also, oily stains in their room and on their clothes. So this is a jewel pod up here, and if you notice, if you break it open, it almost looks like olive oil. So that's another sign as well. Some more environmental signs. These are vape coils. These are used in tank systems, so larger vapes that produce large puffs of smoke or vapor. These need to be maintained, and you can also create your own. And so if you notice, all these tools are generally used to create coils and maintain vaping devices. It's electronic, so you have to maintain the device. These usually cost anywhere from $10 to $25. If you make your own, it's cheaper, you just need some wire. Also, if you're noticing mysterious chargers and cords laying around, you saw some of them have USB devices that plug into laptops. So, if you're unfamiliar with a charger, maybe you want to ask your child about it. Here are some physical signs of vaping. Some of these are pretty obvious. Dry mouth specifically, vaping is mildly dehydrating due to the components in the e-liquid or e-juice. So this leads to dry mouth and nasal passages. An extreme reaction would be nosebleeds. People that use nicotine also have caffeine sensitivity. So people who use nicotine products are more sensitive to caffeine in general. So if you're noticing a decreased consumption in caffeine, that could also be a sign. Nicotine withdrawal, also very noticeable. I can tell some of the teens that use, because I see some people nodding, within 45 minutes to an hour, they're visibly irritated, moody, angry. The withdrawal from nicotine is very emotionally visible as well. Just note, also could be vaping marijuana. So now let's talk about some cannabis trends. I could probably spend like 2 hours just on a presentation on cannabis, but we're just going to do a very brief overview. So it's really important to know it is much more potent these days. Before human intervention, the THC potency in cannabis was 0.2 to 0.5% potent. So prior to the 1960s, the THC content, again, was about 0.5%. That was before humans changed the structure, potency, etc. 1960s and 70s, it was about 1% THC. 80s and 90s, it was about 3 to 4% THC. Any guesses where it is right now, the average THC content? Just the dried green stuff?
Doing GMO, it's like 30%.
Very close. So average THC content in just the dried green stuff is 20%. So think about that for a second. So any student that tells me, oh, ma'am, it's just a plant, I don't know, they don't really call me ma'am, but miss, it's just a plant, it's fine, right? No, it's actually 20% THC nowadays compared to the 60s. Again, just the dried green stuff. So now we're going to talk about something called Thc Concentrates, which come in various different forms. Those potencies are between 40 to 99%. Some of them are pure THC. So you are using, what they're doing is they're extracting the THC using highly flammable butane hash oil, which basically is pulling the pure THC out of the plant to create different concentrates. So these products are oftentimes inhaled through vaping devices, especially the oil. We're seeing a lot of oil cartridges in vapes. Smokeless and odorless. So again, you really can't tell that they're vaping because it doesn't have that skunky smell like typical leaf marijuana does. And oftentimes it can be eaten through edibles as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So this slide isn't typically in here, but I thought it was really interesting. So about 9 different states have legalized marijuana for recreational use. And here's just some statistics from Colorado, so one of the states that has legalized marijuana for recreational use. They've noticed a 65% increase in first-time marijuana users, just among youth, which is actually the #1 in the nation, as well as increases in the following. So adolescent suicides, DUIs, fatal motor vehicle accidents, ER visits, incidents of psychosis. This is actually huge. So not just in Colorado, but there has been a 6-fold increase in schizophrenia, as well as ER visits have doubled. People who are going to the ER for extreme reactions, hallucinations, feeling detached from reality, all of these things we're seeing with high concentrations of THC, which we were not seeing, obviously, back in the 60s when it was 0.5%. Increased crime and difficulty hiring workers. Some of the other interesting statistics from Colorado is that 6.1% of users are purchasing 75% of the product. So they're really marketing people with substance use disorders to keep up, to make all the money, keep buying all the products. So obviously these are people who meet the criteria for a substance use disorder. I actually heard this in a presentation recently and it really connected. So if you think about the caffeine in a 20-ounce Coke, that was about the potency of marijuana in the 90s. Now it's equivalent to drinking 33 cappuccinos at one time. So just pretty crazy. So we're obviously seeing addiction rates increasing. Before it would be about 10% of people that would use cannabis would become addicted. Now it's up to about 30% because of the potency. Some good things. This is actually data from Monitoring the Future 2021. So cannabis use in the past year with 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, we are actually seeing a decline. So, and this is not just with cannabis, this is vaping and all substances, alcohol. So 2020 compared to 2021, a couple theories, obviously they don't know for sure, but adolescents are spending a lot of time at home. They weren't hanging out in social circles. They didn't have access to a lot of the same connections maybe that they used before to get substances. They were spending a lot of time with their families. So we're actually seeing a decline, which is not what we expected. So overall, most teens are not using cannabis. Nationally, only 10.1% of 10th graders and 19.5% of 12th graders used in the past month. So the previous slide was the past year, this is the past month. So teens really like to say, oh, mom and dad, everyone smokes weed, everyone vapes, and that is not the case. So here are some risks associated with using THC. So research shows THC intoxication has been shown to impair cognitive functioning on a number of levels. So all the way from basic coordination to more complex tasks, such as the ability to plan, organize, solve problems, make decisions, remember and control emotions and behavior. I can tell with my students that are using cannabis regularly, they really struggle with all of those areas that I mentioned. Increase of mental illness, which we talked about, increased risk of developing a substance use disorder, and hospitalization, especially with edibles. A lot of students will take an edible, has no effect, when really it could take 2 to 3 hours for your body to notice an effect. They take another one, then they end up overdosing and going to the hospital. So this is really interesting. So as parents, there's a question on what's called the PAYS survey. It stands for Pennsylvania Youth Survey, which is given every 2 years. Mifflin actually takes it. Students who admitted to using in a lifetime, so using ever versus the past 30 days, compared to how their parents perceived the acceptability of using marijuana. So kids who thought their parents thought it was not wrong at all, 48% used in a lifetime, all the way to parents who thought it was very wrong, 9%. So there is a link in you making sure you're having a conversation with your child about your views on substance use connected to how often or how much they're using. Fully developed brains may be able to use marijuana or alcohol without serious consequences, but that is not true for undeveloped brains. So if a student says, well, mom and dad, you drink or you vape, my brain is developed, yours is not. End of story. So it's not hypocritical for you to use and insist that they don't. Number one substance teens are treated for in inpatient and outpatient facilities is marijuana. Same with Caron. I think it's 55 to 60% right now are in there for marijuana use. So again, tips for your toolbox. Make sure you're sending clear messages, consistent messages of parental disapproval, like we saw on the previous slide, are linked to lower rates of use. You are the number one influence on your child's relationship with drugs and alcohol. Here are some signs of marijuana use. I won't read through all of these. And here are some signs of cannabis withdrawal. So obviously not every student that uses is going to go through withdrawal. Withdrawal is defined as 3 or more signs and symptoms listed above within approximately 1 week after cessation of heavy prolonged use. So we're not saying students that are using once or twice. This is students who use regularly. These are the withdrawal symptoms that they could be experiencing. So there's mental withdrawal symptoms and there are physical withdrawal symptoms. I hear a lot of teens say, oh, marijuana is not physically addicting or addictive. It is, it just looks a little bit different than if you're going through withdrawal from alcohol or other drugs. Okay, so we'll briefly talk about alcohol trends. Again, a good trend that we're seeing, this is Monitoring the Future 2021, with alcohol, same with cannabis, is we're seeing a decline. So 8th graders went from 20.5% in 2020 to 17% in 2021. 10th graders went from 40 to 28, and 12th grade went from 55 to 46. So seeing some good declines in use nationally. All I'll touch on this slide is, again, the majority of teens have never been drunk, no matter what they try to tell you. So only 10% of 8th graders, 29% of 10th graders, and 42% of 12th graders have been drunk. Have been drunk. So that is, 58% of 12th graders who have not been drunk. So again, the majority of students are not using substances. So you can even, this presentation is going to be emailed out, or the video will be emailed out. You can show these percentages to your teens and say, see, this is an actual nationwide study to say that the majority of teenagers do not use substances. This is data from the Pennsylvania Youth Survey again. This is from 2019. The data just came out from 2021 or is coming out very soon. But most kids say, I took it without permission. I gave money to an older person to buy, whether it be a friend or a sibling, or my parents provided it to me. So keys for this, make sure you keep an eye on your alcohol, mark it, level it, check it, lock it, whatever you need to do. Discuss family values with your older children. So if you have older siblings, have conversations with them about not buying younger people alcohol. And if you drink, role model healthy behavior. Our adolescents are always watching us when it comes to using our cell phones. Make sure we're modeling healthy choices when it comes to drinking and using drugs. I know for a fact I have a 3-year-old at home and another one on the way, and I know he watches everything I do. So they're watching you. What do you think is the substance that is most frequently misused by teens? I'm just going to have you raise your hand. So do you think it is A, nicotine, B, marijuana, C, Adderall, or D, alcohol? Yes, alcohol is still the most frequently misused substance by teens, even though we're seeing it decline. We're also seeing big declines in binge drinking, which is good. Just so you all know about the social host liability laws in Pennsylvania, you cannot give alcohol to your teens' friends who are under the age of 21 under any circumstance, even in your own home, even if you have their parents' permission. You also cannot knowingly allow a person under 21 to remain in your home or on your property while they've been consuming alcohol. And you do not have the right to serve alcohol to someone else's child. Here are some negative risks associated with alcohol use, which again are very similar to the risks associated with vaping and cannabis use. Any drug that you're using when your brain is not fully developed is going to interfere with academic and social emotional development. Again, I feel like this has been in here a million times, but most youth are not using. So 68% of 8th through 12th graders have never tried alcohol. Again, this is from Monitoring the Future 2021. 76% of 8th through 12th graders have never tried marijuana. And 88% of 8th through 12th graders combined have never tried a cigarette. So, good news, most youth are not using. So, we'll end with these thoughts. So, what is your vantage point as a parent? We've talked about this a lot, but teens often have a false perception of their peers' substance use. They tend to grossly overestimate unhealthy behaviors and underestimate healthy behaviors. So again, you probably hear these statements a lot. Mom, everybody vapes, everybody smokes weed, it's just a plan, it's not a big deal. I'm the only kid with a curfew. Why can't I have a cell phone till I don't know. Why does my 11-year-old friend have a cell phone and I don't? These all lead to false perceptions that normalize unhealthy behaviors. So when you hear teens or adolescents saying these types of things, throw some statistics at them. Say, actually, what makes you think that? Because the majority of adolescents do not engage in these unhealthy behaviors. We need your help correcting false perceptions. So here are some quick tips for talking. Be calm and relaxed. Don't lecture. Allow opportunities for your teen to be heard. Keep an open mind, be clear about your views, and be positive. Try to also choose a time where you have their full attention, where they're not distracted by other things. So maybe at the dinner table, if you eat dinner as a whole family, that might be a good time to discuss substance use. Here are some conversation starters. I really like the one, have you ever seen anything at a party that scared you? Again, tell them you're going to have an open mind, you're not going to use judgment. It opens that conversation for, I saw this happen, okay, how did you feel about that? This one I use all the time in groups. What's the hardest part of being your age? Teens love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about why their lives are harder, which I actually agree with. And it can open the door for other conversations. Talk about ways to refuse drugs or alcohol. It sounds silly, but actually role play with them. Say, hey, you're in the locker room this afternoon and a kid comes up to you and offers you a vape. What could you say? What could you do? Who could you go to for support? You'd be surprised the reactions that you'll get from them. Also, I get asked this question all the time. What if they ask me about my past experience? What if they ask about when I used drugs or alcohol when I was young? It's okay, maybe you did experiment with substances. Just because you used substances in the past, there's no guarantee that their experience will be the same. We saw on previous slides that lots of things have changed about drug and alcohol use. So that's why you do not want them using drugs or alcohol. Again, just because you experimented and you were fine does not mean that they will be. Remember, overall, however you decide to answer, know that you're the #1 influence in your child's life. There is statistical data to prove that. They listen to you. You might not think they do. You might think it goes in one ear and out the other, but if they're offered something at a party, your voice is going to be the first thing that's in the back of their mind that they're hearing. Make your roles and expectations known. If they're asking you questions, find out why. There's usually always a reason why they're asking. And your past use is not an excuse for their use. If you suspect use, take action. Ask them directly and explain your observations. Are you vaping? I'm concerned because I found a pod in your room, or I'm seeing some oily stains on your clothes. I'm noticing that you are irritable when you get home. Just explain your observations, ask them directly. Investigate further, search their room, search their backpacks. Enforce limits and consequences. If I catch you vaping, this is what's gonna happen. Seek a professional behavioral health assessment. I do these at high school. Get help from a reputable treatment center. And reach out. We can help you find resources. So you can contact your school counselors, you can contact your social worker, myself, any teacher, any trusted adult, administrators. Anyone can help you get connected with the resources you need to. Also, your health teachers are a really good resource. They know a lot about this stuff as well. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip this one. This is more so people who are really, when we were really embedded in the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of us were virtual. Here are some websites. Again, if you want to just gather some more knowledge. SAMHSA, the bottom one, a lot of the statistics and information came from this website for this presentation as well. Same with the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Search Institute has some awesome resources, a lot of ways to stay connected, activities to do with your family. So I'll just leave this up for a second if you want to take a picture. And then lastly, Caron also, we offer in-person psychoeducational support groups, but we also offer some digital learning courses. So if your child needs our Project Connect group, which is our tobacco cessation group, but it's not running right now, we have a virtual program called Connect 5. It's a self-paced, online, free program that adolescents can take themselves through. They get a certificate at the end, so if they need to show a certificate to their school, juvenile probation officer, anyone that might need to see it, they can use this program as well. We have other types of programs. We have marijuana education for professionals. We have a course called Substance Use and Its Impact on the Family. And these are all free. So there's a QR code there. If you wanted to take a picture of this as well, feel free. The website is also just caron.org/digital learning. And lastly, there is an evaluation that my company likes to do if you have a QR code that you can scan and complete before you leave. I have, like I said, business cards up here which have my email and my cell phone number. And I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to have
Yeah, I do want to respect everybody's time, but Gabby, thank you so much for your We do appreciate it. And I want to thank you guys again for coming, but a couple of things. We know, not only as a school district, but as a community, there's a lot for us to talk about. This is just one of the topics. So, we want to have those conversations. There's a lot going on for our youth today. And of course, we want to help students directly. We want to help parents help their kids. So this is just one way to do that. Gabby does have cards up here, so please feel free to take them. Out on the table out front, there was Safe to Say. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but out of Sandy Hook, if you remember, the big slogan was, if you see something, say something. So the Attorney General's office did start programs probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where you could report something directly using that telephone number, and that's the little stickers that are out there. Have the telephone number and the website. We will often get tips that come through. If it's very serious, the Attorney General will just handle it directly and communicate with emergency services. But if it's something that's not as serious in their mind, they will forward it to, let's say it's a high school student, me, Mr. McKay, Dr. Hess, and the high school administration will get that, and then we react. It's 24/7. So please feel free to have those stickers there. And as Gabby said, there's a lot of resources increasing. I mean, Melissa does an outstanding job as one of her social workers. Her colleague is Giovanna Thompson, who's basically housed at the middle school, but they split the rest of the district. And we have our school counselors. We have Gabby from Caron and Charis from Caron. So there's plenty of services that parents could reach. Does anybody have any questions with a few minutes we have left? I know one of the things that resonated for me as now as a parent who has a kid in there, 2 kids, 23 and 25. The teenage years were trying time. And that prefrontal cortex resonated with me. The delay resonated with me. And one of the things we do when we get data, that the PACE survey, Pennsylvania Youth Survey, we've been doing that probably it's done every 2 years for 6, 8, 10, and 12th graders. So it's every other year. When we get that data and we share it with the administration, like Mr. Murray, for example, or if we do anything with the data, we always frame it positively. And Gabby did point that out because that's something that resonated with me. 62% of our kids or 80% of our kids are not doing XYZ, as opposed to this is how many kids are smoking, et cetera, et cetera. So there were a few things, but we always try to frame it in the positive light. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Yes.
I was just wondering, we talk about, peers and parties and things like that, but obviously the high school campus things can be witnessed. Would that be like the say something, where you make a private call, like if it's something's being seen in the bathroom?
Oh, absolutely. We get those. And of course,
like
that comes right through to the administration then, and they start an investigation. Just like it was in the old days, they make a report, right? Write up a report.
Well, and I think it's hard because, if you, like we say child, but obviously teenagers using, the restroom and going in and
Right.
seeing things they shouldn't, and then coming out, and then you are getting, you don't want to be the snitch or the tattle or what
Right.
have you. But it's not just parties that these things can occur at.
Yeah.
It's prevalent, obviously.
But if something was observed in a bathroom, they could use the safe to say method.
Yeah. The other thing they can do as well, and I tell students this multiple times throughout the year, but there are high school bookmarks on their Chromebooks. When you open up the internet tab on their Chromebook, if they click on high school bookmarks, they can anonymously refer anyone to our staff program. They can fill in their name. They all come directly to me. They can also sign up for staff groups using that same form. Again, it just comes to me. So I receive those responses and then I filter them out, add them to our agenda, and we talk about them as a team. So if they were concerned about backlash or snitching or whatever, they could submit a referral and just note that they don't want to speak directly with the student assistant specialist. So
I did see another.
Is marijuana still considered a gateway drug?
that's a good question. So we don't call it a gateway drug, but if you notice, obviously due to the increased potency and the developing brain, when you're using substances at a young age, it kind of opens the door for other substances. We don't necessarily label it that, but yeah. Anytime you're using substances at a young age, you're at an increased risk for addiction and using other substances.
Mr. Riley?
took my first one. Thank you. And I'm going to use safety too, by the way. Are there any theories as to how and why the potency went from 0.5% back in the 70s when I remember the era the way I remember it anyhow, to 20%? Is that right? 20%?
Yeah, just human intervention. So obviously, back then in the 60s, it was the natural plant. But there are strains that are changed and chemically altered. So when they're altered and then regrown, the potency is naturally stronger. And then obviously the concentrates are actually extracting the pure THC from the plant to create an entirely different substance.
And is that the makers, if you will, is the supposition that they believe the demand is?
Yeah, it's all about demand. So, obviously when you have a more potent product, people are becoming more addicted and they want to use more. And so with the increase in demand, you have to continuously change the product. So, yeah, that's what is so sad about, 6 point something percent of the people are buying 75% of the product.
Yeah.
So they're really targeting the people who are, addicted to the substances, which is sad.
So my question for you is, I'm wondering what your advice is on how to talk to kids about, so in Manhattan, right, it's legal and it's outside, so you're walking down and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's Disney characters in Zootopia, the camel is stoned.
Yep.
In Nemo, the tourist, at the Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so trendy.
Yeah.
It's so trendy. It's not even a sort of off the charts conversation anymore. It's literally mainstream. It's on primetime TV. It's everywhere. And the conversation I have with my child and some students is like, look, it's still an adult-only thing. Like, alcohol's adult-only, everything's adult-only, whatever. But I'm wondering what you say. Like, what is your approach to that? Where it's like, I'm just wondering what you're...
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. And again, it's our culture is normalizing substance use and making it seem like it's okay. I'm sorry.
I didn't say glamorizing.
Oh yeah, especially with there's some show out. Oh, what's it called? It's a popular show on Netflix. Euphoria.
Euphoria.
Yeah. It's the other thing I say too is because kids will say, "Oh, it's legal. If it's legal, that means that it's safe." No. Cannabis is not federally regulated and it is not state regulated. So really dispensaries can do whatever they want, they can sell whatever they want. It is not a regulated product. So in my mind, a product that is not regulated and approved by the FDA is not safe.
Okay.
So I use that a lot. I also use the statistics a lot. And we have honest conversations about like, how does that make you feel when you see this out in the world? I think some of the commercials are helping. I forget, Real Talk or the vaping commercials that they're coming out with nowadays are good. So I show those a lot. A lot of like short clips that show the impact on the brain. We just focus on the facts. Caron, if you notice, we're not about like scare tactics because those don't work. We're about educating students and families. So yeah, putting like the crashed car on the lawn, those things don't really work anymore.
I know when my kids were going through, it was really about that delay. And I think the family, one of the things that came out of our last PACE data, that the biggest protective factor, because they emerge in this survey, is the family unit. And we know we struggle with that as well. But I think, with the conversation you have with your kids is about, look, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to be at the party, you're going to be in a car, you're going to be somewhere. It's just the same conversation you have with seatbelts. But you're going to have to make that decision. Arm them with the courage to do that. And I think a lot of the family factor is the protective factor.
Yep.
It's how do we arm those kids who may not be so fortunate.
And even in the groups, like I say to the kids, I'm not here to change your mind about how you feel. I'm not here to say that you can no longer use this substance ever again. If you cut back a little bit through this group, or you decide that this is not for you, that's great, even if you learn a little bit. So again, I try not to walk in with all these scare tactics. It's more about a conversation and educating them. Yeah. They like being in control with those kinds of things.
Yes. We know that it's feelings, not objects.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, again, I really thank you guys again. Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate you coming. Please come up here, grab any cards of Gabby's, and then on the way out, if you just want to grab some of the Safe to Say stuff, that'd be great. Thanks again.